What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about a free agent that PFF believes the Lions could sign this offseason to a pretty nice deal. So let's get it started.
You know, I got to shout out DoseOfDion, man, because it was actually the first time I went live on YouTube. And, you know, guys don't know DoseOfDion. He put out a lot of good content for the Detroit Lions.
Welcome everybody to that video. Glad you guys are here. And today, yes, we're talking about a free agent, and this is a free agent that we have not talked about yet. This is Matt Milano from the Buffalo Bills. So PFF has done kind of projections, like, you know, certain free agents that are going to sign in certain places. And one big free agent that PFF has signing with the Detroit Lions is Matt Milano. They also have Kenny Golladay returning to Detroit, but Romeo Okwara going elsewhere, which would make sense. If you sign a guy like Matt Milano, who's going to be pretty expensive, bringing back Romeo and Kenny Golladay is pretty much can't happen. I mean, it just really can't happen financially for the Lions. So even bringing back Kenny and Romeo is going to be difficult on its own. So trying to bring back all three just won't be able to happen. So this would mean Romeo Okwara would part ways with the Lions, which would stink, you know, knowing that his brother is here. I mean, the big question with Romeo is he willing to take less money to stay in Detroit, potentially to continue to play with his brother? Because I think he could get a pretty nice payday elsewhere if he wanted to. He's young. He's coming off an incredible season, which makes people very excited. He's actually, 2 of his last 3 years were really good statistically. I could see him go get a lot of money if he wanted to. The question will be, does he want to take maybe less to stay in Detroit, play with Julian? But if you sign a guy like Matt Milano, it really won't be able to happen, because I just don't think you'll have enough money to offer him if you're also bringing back Kenny Golladay, which is kind of what PFF is going with here. So we'll roll with it. So yeah, Romeo's gone. There's going to be a little bit of a hole to fill there. But one of the worst parts of the Lions defense last season, and there was a lot of rough parts last season, was the linebacker position. And it's a place where the Lions could look to kind of make a pretty big splash, that is in free agency and or maybe the draft as well. You know, you're bringing in Aaron Glenn, you're bringing in Aubrey Pleasant, Mark DeLone, you know, so you could be looking to bring in some different linebackers. Maybe some guys stay, maybe some don't, but the linebacker group was pretty specific to how Matt Patricia wanted to do things. He was looking for bigger bodies, you know, with a lot of size. Matt Milano's kind of the complete opposite. I mean, he would get you going a different way about it. He'd be looking at speed, pass coverage, smaller type of linebackers. Certain teams did, like the Patriots, they had linebackers like that. The majority of teams, I would say, weren't going that way. So Matt Milano would be it would be change of pace, you know, from what the Lions have done recently, and it'd be very similar to what you see from a lot of linebackers coming out of this draft. So let's talk about Matt Milano a little bit. Okay, PFF has the Lions signing him to a 4-year, $45 million deal, which would make sure he's under contract through 30 years old, which would mean that he's basically a core piece of this defense, who Matt Patricia and you know, Brad Holmes said they wanted to get was core pieces for this defense, well, for the team in general. And if you sign a guy like Matt Milano 4 years, that's what you'd be getting. You'd be getting a core piece to the front seven, could build around for a little while. Strong candidate for a pretty nice contract. I've actually seen him projected to make $13 to $14 million. If it does come down to 4 years, $45 million, and he's willing to accept that, it'd be a pretty good deal from what I've seen for the Lions. Now, Matt Milano is coming off a couple of injuries, which could push, you know, his price down. Would be happening in this situation because he's young and he's a good player, but he didn't have his best season, and he's coming off some injuries. At least according to PFF, he didn't have his best season. All right, he's coming off a season where he missed multiple games, 2 injuries, hamstring injury, but also he's coming off of a pectoral injury. Now, I try to look into, okay, is this guy continuing to have injuries? Not really. He hasn't missed tons of games. Over the last 3 seasons, I guess he's missed 10 games in total, but this last season was really the year that he missed a pretty good amount of games. But you ask, okay, is he injury prone? I don't know if I'd go that far. I will say, however, it is concerning that a lot of his injuries are hamstring injuries. You know, they're kind of repeated in that way. There really are no other repeated injuries, even going back to college, but the hamstring is something that we've seen come up a few times. To be fair to him, this season, a lot of players dealt with hamstring injuries. We know because of the weird offseason, so that could have just been the issue. It does lower his price. Well, hey, you got a good player for a little bit cheaper, which you can't ever be mad about, but it is something to be, you know, concerned about. You know, how healthy is he going to be, and is it something that's going to continue to come up? Now, speaking of his game, Matt Milano is very talented, but like I said, he's a different type of linebacker from what the Lions have been collecting. He's 6 foot tall, 223 pounds. He was actually a former safety. He was a safety back at Boston College, which makes a lot of sense considering what he's good at, you know, what he's really good at, and also his size. It makes sense that he was a former safety. Also, something that I pointed out today with Zaven Collins is that he was a former safety. The difference is Matt Milano didn't put on all this weight. You know, he probably bulked up a little bit, but he didn't become, you know, 250, 260 pounds. He stayed at 223, and the Bills used him, and they used that speed to their advantage. So he played in a 4-3 defense where he played as an outside backer, which is what, you know, Lions could be looking to add this offseason, potentially if they switch and they play a lot more 4-3 this year. Having an outside linebacker in today's NFL that can help in pass coverage, you're seeing a lot of teams go to because of how many, passing sets offense likes to run. Having a linebacker that can fly around the field and help in pass coverage is kind of essential for a 3-down linebacker. I mean, just having a guy that's good against the run isn't that popular anymore, and those guys are usually cheaper in free agency because they just can't be on the field at all times. They could be limited to 1 down a series just because, teams are passing the ball so much in certain game plans, they wouldn't even be involved. But Matt Milano can be involved in a lot of game plans. And I think what was the biggest thing for him is that what we saw in the playoffs was he played nearly every single snap, and he was a huge part of that defense, and he had a great game against Baltimore. He was impressive in the playoffs, and you saw him on the biggest stage show up, and he was a huge staple for that defense that teams had to game plan for. The first thing that he does well that stands out to you about his game is, of course, his coverage. And it's really a lot in zone coverage, but he also can be tasked with man coverage because of his athletic ability, and being a safety, he's got those coverage skills to match up with a tight end and a linebacker. Sometimes he can be a little outsized in terms of height, like a guy like Travis Kelce, because he is only 6 foot tall, but his ability in pass coverage is the biggest thing that steps out to you, especially in his zone, right? Kind of reminds me of a Zaven Collins who we just talked about. So he's really good in zone coverage, and if you look at the numbers, they'll tell you the same thing. All right, last season he's coming off a year, like I said, he missed some games. He only allowed a 63% completion percentage and a 70.9 pass rating, only allowing 1 touchdown and 1 interception. And the biggest thing that stands out to me here is only 7.2 yards per completion. That's actually pretty low. But the year before that, in 2019, a 67% completion percentage allowed, 94.5 pass rating, 3 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. However, only 6.1 yards per completion. That's pretty impressive. I know he's playing the linebacker spot. Of course, maybe not taking a lot of deep shots on him, but it is still pretty impressive, in my opinion, to see that low. That means, the passes that he's giving up aren't really going that far after, the fact that it's completed. And in 2018, only allowed a 56.5% completion percentage, 69.5 pass rating. He allowed 3 touchdowns and he had 3 interceptions. So he's showing that he's a playmaker also in coverage. All right. His ability in coverage is the first thing you'll notice about his game, and it's one of his strengths. At one point he was a top 10 PFF coverage linebacker, not this past year, but in the past. Personally, like watching him drop in his zone more often because I think in man coverage, yeah, he's quicker than most of our linebackers, but it can still be an issue because he's not extremely fast from what I've seen, in terms of, cuts and like ins and out. I guess that's an issue for a lot of linebackers, at that point. But in zone, he's got great awareness. He's calling out things, pointing to his teammates. He sees the whole field. It's remarkable. He's a leader of that defense, you can tell.
This is the play that I absolutely love with Matt Milano in pass coverage. So you're going to see Mark Andrews cross his face on a little crossing right here, the tight end. And instead of just waiting to let the play happen, you can see he's not the fastest guy, but you can see the safety in him just jump down and make a play on the ball, not waiting to just let it happen. And he's able to get in there, disrupt it. It's a complete pass, and they're able to, I think they got off the field.
So that's his biggest strength as a player. Also, when it comes to, tackling, he's a very good form tackler. Missed tackle numbers do concern me a bit. Never been lower than 13%. All right, 2019 was his best year, just at about 13.7%, which is good. You do see an improvement from 2018, which is nice because it was up at 20% then. And this past year, he didn't play that many, so, it's kind of hard to judge. Not saying he's a bad tackler, but I don't think he's one of the top tacklers available. Being able to fill through that gap like a running back, fill the hole, make a big play on the run game in the back end. He can fly sideline to sideline. He has the speed. He has the size to do it. And like I said, I think he fit well in a 4-3 defense with maybe some versatility. Now, some of the issues, some of the things he struggled with is really when he's picked up, when he's blocked, when he's engaged. Because he's not the biggest guy, he doesn't do a great job disengaging from a blocker, being able to escape a blocker. He's not necessarily known for his incredible run defense. He's picked up by a blocker. That's when he has issues. It's when he has, free lanes and he's not touched. He becomes a big problem for offenses.
What you'll see from this clip is something that he really has to do to help himself here. Watch how quickly he engages the offensive lineman first, pops off of him with a quick push, and then gets to the running back. He can't let the offensive line engage him and push him out of the play and get connected. He has to initiate the contact to push himself off to get himself towards the runner.
Those block shedding can be a problem. Also, you can see him be overly aggressive at times where he just wants to go make a play. So he'll fly down, kind of get himself stuck in a play action situation where he gets himself mixed into the defensive line and he kind of pushes himself out of the play. But that may concern people. Oh, wow, he struggles against blockers. But that's something that you see with a lot of, I'm going to be honest, you see with a lot of linebackers coming out of this draft because of the size. They're just smaller. They're basically safety size, a little bit over safety size. And that's an issue because they just don't disengage well from blocks. I think that's why he's also very successful in a 4-3, especially against the run, is because you have a lot of hats on hats in the front, and it allows him to play free and just make a play on a running back. Bring a running back down in space, fly around, use his awareness and vision.
Now, this is personally one of my favorite plays from Matt Milano. You're going to see the pursuit here, the angles, and his ability to fly sideline to sideline. So watch him start all the way from one side of the field, work his way over to catch up to Lamar Jackson on the other side of the field and get involved in this tackle. That just shows his speed, his awareness, and his pursuit.
He's really good with the feel and zone coverage, how deep to get, which can be an issue with a lot of guys that don't get deep enough, but he has a very good feel there. He's an outside backer. He can be very beneficial to your team, but it's really the pass coverage that I think he brings. It's just something Lions didn't have recently. They haven't had guys that are fast, that are a little bit smaller in size, that, are their best in pass coverage. The Lions really didn't have that. Tavai had a really strong, I think it was a rookie season in pass coverage, but for the most part, this will be a completely different linebacker from what the Lions have had. And if they want to go that direction, Aaron Glenn said he likes big guys, but he also likes fast guys. So if the Lions want to go that direction, they definitely could. Okay, that's the thing, is that he'll fly around, and he's more of today's type of linebacker that you can build around with your defense. I like him. I do. There was this really good article wrote, about people concerned about, his injury history, basically stating that, look, he's not really an injury-prone player. It's thrown around too often. I agree. That is thrown around so many times. Guy gets injured one time, he's injury-prone. It's like, no, he's not injury-prone. However, the hamstrings do concern me. I will give him the benefit of the doubt that, yes, this season, almost every player was dealing with a hamstring injury. I mean, like every Lion had a hamstring injury at one point. It's just because of the weird offseason. Concern I do have is that he has missed a pretty good amount of games this past year. Well, he fit the scheme, but if you do sign him, of course, he's going to fit the scheme well. So I think if you do go to a 4-3, if you need an outside backer, this is someone you can lock up as a core piece. I see like he's a leader of that defense, and he's a guy that shows up, and he could be a 3-down linebacker. I like him. I think you could pair him up with a young linebacker. He could help those guys, and I just think he gives you something different. Just a different dynamic that the Lions really haven't had. It'd be really refreshing as a fan to see a player like that joining Detroit. And you could just see what he did statistically. Last year, he actually broke out and had 3.5 sacks, which isn't normal for him. He hasn't had that recently. 3.5 sacks was nice. You saw his ability in pass as a pass rusher too. So, he kind of gives you everything. Pass coverage. He can drop back. He's very aggressive on underneath routes, jumping down on them with that safety, background. Has a great feel in zone coverage. We're willing to shell out some money, and you want a guy that could be a core piece. He's top of the list on one of those guys that could be a core piece, barring how you feel about the hamstring injury. I don't know if they're giving at that price, but if they did, I can't say I'd be mad at it, but it would be a pretty big shoes to fill with Romeo leaving, and that would be tough. It'd be tough pill to see Romeo leave, but hey, you only got so much money to go around, so you got to prioritize certain things, and if you believe you can find maybe another pass rusher in this draft, or if you believe Jay Sean could step into that role, then maybe this is the move that you go with. Maybe this is the route that you go with. It's just really, how do you feel about it? Do you feel better about finding core pieces at linebacker in the draft, or do you feel better about finding another pass rusher in the draft? Okay, so we've seen some guys mocked there, like Patrick Jones recently, so let me know what you guys think. I like him as a player. It'll just be an interesting route to take. Thank you, Prime, for watching, and I'm out.